Welcome to Bite Size Dental Marketing. Today I have Jared Duckett from Duckett Ladd CPA and Advisors. You guys are out of Missouri, which I'm a big fan of, right up the road. Jared, I would love to hear the origin story of you and the firm and how you got started and where you're going.
There you go. Well, first off, Eric, appreciate you having me. I love that intro question, kind of go through your journey. To be honest with you, Eric, we could probably create a 5 or 6 series podcast episodes around the journey and what not to do and what to do and learn from your past mistakes, right? But I'll give you the short version. So I basically came out of college around 2005, give or take, jumped out and looking for jobs all over the place, ended up at a very small firm. It was actually the second location of another firm, right, in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner now, Bill Ladd, was kind of started it, if you will. He broke up from a bigger firm. They put him in this firm and said, hey, let's start this location. I was the first hire as an intern, to be honest. In college, I was kind of doing some stuff, 20 hours a week. And so long story short, jumped in with Bill. We grew that location up in Springfield, actually added another location in northwest Arkansas. So we got to about 3 locations, 75 people, give or take. And then that was in 05 to 15. And then in 2015, we had 6 or 7 partners, and we all just decided we have different visions, different ways of doing things. We just decided to just split all 3 offices up. And to be honest with you, that was probably the best decision we've ever made. Nothing against those partners or anything, but it just allowed us to get, I'm going to use the word sole ownership of the Springfield location and really just do things differently. And that's where we really started going into the niche-based dental market, if that makes sense. Because before, we were generalist. Because if you typically think about a CPA firm, right, they do everything. They do personal tax returns. They might work with restaurants. They might work with hospitals, nonprofits, and do all kinds of different services. And that was the generalist. And we turned it on a dime and said, hey, we're going to go deep in something. Took us a couple of years to realize what that would be in dental. But then around 18 or 19, we started going deep on dental. And so we really changed our services. And the big thing we did differently, I think, is how we look at our team culture. I say we're not a typical accounting firm. I'm sitting here wearing shorts right now. I mean, we're just different, right?
Nice, yeah.
Different in a good way. And then we go with dental for about 4 years strong. And so now we're a dental specific CPA firm. All our clients are dentists. And that's our mission, to help our team members and clients get better. And we love working with dental practice owners.
I think we went on a similar journey in that. Now, we were always dental specific, but I will tell you, I think there's some nuances in specializing around dentistry, around what their supply should be. And I think, for me, benchmarking is so powerful. And if you have access to these other accounts and these other people that you're talking to, you do get to see what they're earning. You do get to see how they're classifying different R&D items and how they're getting technology and all the things. And I think it just adds so much more value to a client. At least I know on marketing, when we can speak to what's happening in the industry, but also what other clients are doing and bring it to bear for that specific client. I think it's really powerful. Now, what led you to dental? Why not optometry? Why not legal? Why not, real estate?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. I cut my teeth on real estate. From 05 to 15, we got deep into real estate. And it wasn't, I guess I'll say it this way. We were doing a lot of tax and audit work, compliance type work. To me, I guess I'll say it this way. It just wasn't fun. It really wasn't firing me up like going and auditing somebody or doing a tax return. I'm not going to lie, we do tax returns. But really, in the accounting industry, I think it took me 10 years to realize you actually can make somebody's life better. That sounds extremely cheesy. I get it. You can make somebody's life better by consulting with them and allowing them to see what they need to see in their business in order to make business decisions to make their life better. I use the term all the time, or the phrase, we want to help dental practice owners create the business that supports the life they want to live. And so we had a handful of dentists we work with, realized, hey, we can understand the dental industry in and out. It was fun. That's the key word. It was fun. Going to work should be fun, right?
Yeah.
And then just said, hey, let's go get more of them. And then once you get into dental, you know this, once you get in, you just go deep. and
Hmm.
it's a small, it's a big yet small community. Um, and that's the fun part. You know, if I'm sitting there talking, I use the analogy all the time with my clients of an airplane. And it's kind of a, I don't know if everybody's heard of Gino Wickman, maybe in Traction, but he
Hmm.
talks about the airplane a lot. And when I'm talking to a prospective client, I always ask them, you know, they're the dental practice owner. You're flying your airplane, right? Ask them a couple questions. Where are they going? Do they have any idea where their destination is? A lot of people are like, no. Or maybe they know it in general terms. And then I ask them, well, okay, that's where you're going. Where are you at on your journey? And they say, well, I'm about halfway there. And I ask them how they know that, right? And that sort of thing. And then I ask them the most important question I think every single dental practice owner needs to know is, what are you looking at on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis to know how you are in that airplane? Because if you think about that, you're in the cockpit of the airplane. If you ever sneak up there and peek in there, right? I'm not an aviation guy. All kinds of gauges and
Hmm. Hmm.
things and
Hmm.
stuff they're looking at. I'm not saying you have to look, I'm a simple guy, right? I'm not saying you have to look at 50 things. You need to look anywhere from 10 to 15 things on a monthly basis to know how you're flying. Because if you don't know how you're flying, you're probably not going to end up at that destination. So that's where we come in. We want to show you what to look at, because they're the ones that need to make the decisions, the dental practice owners. We just put the gauges in their face. This is where you're at, and you can course correct along the way. That's what we do.
Now, on that thinking, what are the top two or three things that you think a practice owner should look at in a month?
Yeah, it's a couple things. I mean, we break it down into 8 categories, but I always use the deserted island scorecard, which is if you're on a deserted island by yourself, sitting in a little tiki chair or whatever with a drink, and every day somebody comes in and gives you a little card, says this is how your practice is doing. And I know all you guys out there, your gals, dental practice owners are like, well, that can't be true because I got to be in there working. Well, I get it, but hypothetically, right? Say you
Hmm.
have all associates that are working. I mean, I would want to know, first off, what is your production per full-time equivalent?
Okay.
Because that tells you, right? Okay, you got 5 or 6 team members, whatever. Are you producing enough to provide for the team? And it's kind of reverses engineers what your overhead is, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, if you got one practice that's generating, let's just say $15,000 per month of production per FTE, full-time equivalent, they should say that. And you got one doctor over here that's doing $20,000 per full-time equivalent, or 25 per full-time equivalent. Pretty much it costs somewhere, you know, a level out. That 20 to 25 is going to be doing more production, of course, which should generate more profit.
Hmm.
So
Now,
that's the first thing I always want to ask.
and you get there, I guess, by just taking your collections or your production, whichever your choice of
Yep,
metric is, dividing it by the number of employees in the same period. Is that correct? So you'd say
that's it.
$250,000 in monthly production divided by 10. Right. Okay.
Yep,
Gotcha.
that's it. To kind of
Hmm.
see if you're producing what you need to be producing.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
That's the number one thing I would want to know in my practice is, I got this many people to care for, if you will, that I'm paying. Am I producing enough to provide for them and then provide for yourself afterwards?
Yeah, I laugh. It's funny in agencies. That's actually a really important metric is revenue per FTE.
Yeah.
Yeah, we that's one of the metrics that Andre and I look at is on a yearly basis or really quarterly. We'll look at uh, it's not so much accounts because accounts can be wildly more complex or easy. But we do look at revenue per FTE as a really good indicator of not only our overall health, but when to hire. Because we know
Yeah.
that if we're in the $250,000 range per FTE, that we now have more capability to we probably need to grow. That might be a little
Mm-hmm.
bit unhealthy, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, new
interesting.
patients too, I'll say, is a big
Hmm.
one that
Okay.
we like, you know, for all our consulting clients, especially every month, we kind of want to show them how many new patients they brought in.
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
goes back to that airplane analogy. What's their destination? Well, what's the old phrase? If you're not growing, you're dying, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Some people are like, well, I don't need a ton of new patients because I don't want to grow that much more. You always have to bring in new patients, because the number one thing I find that people don't look at, let me tell you, I'll see if you agree too, but everybody's looking at how many patients come in the front door on a on a monthly basis, right? I
Hmm.
got 41 new patients this month. Always looking at the front door. they're not turning around and looking at the back door and realizing all those clients that are falling off the 18-month window. So we want to look at net patient attrition. You brought in 41, but you lost 25. So you're only up 16.
Right.
So what can you do? Generating new patients is great. I mean, that's what marketing and everything, that's what you need. How are you going to keep them in the door? That's where you got to really dial down your processes and procedures, make sure they're coming back. Providing good service is number one, right? That makes people come back.
Absolutely. Marketing nothing can fix poor operations or poor patient experience in the practice. Yeah.
100%. So new patients is a big one.
Yeah. So production per FT and new patients, that's the two top ones that you look at. Yeah. A lot of people look at, production per hour and other things, but I do think if you looked at revenue per FTE, that would give you a really good indicator of overall health and be able to benchmark from quarter to quarter. That's great. Now, you talked a lot about the KPIs and indicators you're looking at. How are your practices doing in 2023? What are you seeing out there in the space right now?
Yeah, I would say it this way. At the beginning of the year, I'll say maybe late January into February, a lot of our fee-for-service dental practices or ortho, maybe especially, we were starting, when we were talking to them, they were using words like, man, it seems like it might be slowing down. We always like to stay out in front. Recession probably is coming, right? The economy is going to take a dip from where we've been, right? When is that? That's the question. Right. You can feel tightening spending, or the spending tightening up, in my opinion. I think you can just see that in the data. So we thought there might be a slowdown kind of starting, but from what I'm hearing from our clients, especially in May, they're having really, really good months. Now I know summer's here and kids are out of school, pediatric of course ramps up in the summer and that sort of thing. But I'm not seeing really a slowdown in production. What I'm hearing, and of course this is a no-brainer, is just increased costs with inflation. My costs are increasing. It's tightening up. You've got the perfect scenario. I should say the imperfect scenario of cost rising. And if you're a PPO practice, reimbursement, rates are staying the same, if not getting pinched. So it's kind of this going on. So how can you go back to your gauges, right? You got to be looking at that stuff in order to course correct. But let's get a little tightening on the spending side. It's just increased costs.
Yeah. I think when you look at last year, summer was rough for us in marketing and I think in new patient acquisition because I think I read a study somewhere that said during a normal summer period in the working population, there's 1 in 10 employees on vacation at any given point of a summer. Last year, it was 2 in 10. So roughly 20% of the population was in some form of vacation at any point in the summer. And that's a massive, sort of evolution of practice. This year, we're actually seeing it lower because travel is so expensive right now. And we're seeing lower travel, more staycations and more kids in camps. I think, most overnight camp enrollment and up this summer and things like this. So I agree with you on we're seeing a higher cost and some lower spending. I do think we will see more kids and more people get into dentistry this summer than we did last year, just because of how the vacations tend to shake out there. At least that's kind of what we're projecting this year as well. But I agree with you. We started slow. And most of our offices picked up around March and have had a fairly strong Q2. Yeah.
And I expect it. The question is, will that continue throughout Q3 and Q4? That's kind of the big question. Will it tighten up or will it not? If I had a crystal ball, I mean, it'd be a different story. But again, go back to monitor.
Yeah.
Try to catch. You get leading indicators and lagging indicators. I'm sure you've heard of that terminology of, a lagging indicator is something that has already happened, which is, okay, I brought in 40 new patients.
Right.
Leading indicator is, well, what am I doing to attract those new patients? Am I spending marketing like I should be? Am I investing in that sort of thing? And so you need to be looking at both, but more on the leading, if that makes sense, because you got to stay out in front of it.
Yeah, what happened, and I'm not sure it could have happened any other way. Looking forward is definitely now when a new client comes on and they you open the books, you analyze their tax returns and past years. What do you see as the biggest problem out there, that the most common problem you see when you take on someone, especially if they've been in a non-dental specific agency, or not
Mm-hmm.
accounting, I said agency, but accounting firm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the number one, I riff off this aviation analogy all the time. My team members are like, dude, stop using analogies.
I love a good,
That's the way my
analogy. I
brain
love a good
thinks, man.
analogy.
And
Yeah.
so I think the biggest thing that I see is just they don't have good data to look at, right? And I ask them, if you sit there and ask them the questions, you can see that pretty quick, which is number one question I like to ask when I'm talking to a new person, and I'm getting their pain points. Why are you coming to talk to us? How can we help? And a lot of times it's, I don't have good communication with my CPA and there's no proactivity.
Hmm.
And I'm saying, okay, that's perfect. And then I say, well, tell me about your practice. The first question I ask them usually once they say, well, this is my practice, this is my production, I ask them, how much do you bring home on a monthly basis? Bring home by meaning take out of the practice and go home, take it to your house, right? And provide. I have no idea. Like you don't know how much money you make on a monthly basis. No. And I say, well, let me ask it a different way. If you didn't own that practice and were an associate somewhere else, would you know how much money you made? Well, yeah, I mean, that's my W-2. I'm on, percentage or whatever. I said, well, why don't you know now? I say it in a nice way, of course. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. I don't know how much money I make. So I'm like, well, that's the first thing we need to figure out is what you're making. Because I'm sure you'll agree with this. The business dictates your home life, right?
They're tied together.
One and the same almost, right? And so if the business is frustrating you, which every small business owner it does, if it's frustrating you, you're coming home from work, and you're like, oh my gosh, and oh my gosh. Well, that doesn't support the life you want to live, right? So we need to dive in and fix that business. Make sure you're making what you want to make sure your dental practice is humming along, and your personal life is going to get better. So it's a roundabout way of saying they just don't look at stuff because they don't have good data in front of them to make good decisions in order to improve things.
No, I like what you said about changing people's lives. I've been there. I mean, this is the second company that we've started, and the first one was wildly frustrating, and it was demoralizing. It felt like an albatross around my neck, to use the rhyme of the ancient mariner. I felt like the best I could do was just tread water sometimes, and it was just demoralizing. And to me, the most powerful thing that I've done in growing our company and living close to the life I want to live, is I've built a team of people that I know they care for me and I trust them. And when they give me guidance, I'm more likely to listen to them. And I think if I look out at the happiest dentist I know, all of them constantly talk about this team of advisors they've developed, and they trust them. They're not in a combative relationship of like, oh, they're just telling me to make money. Like, no, like I'm telling you what I think, because I legitimately want to make your life better. And that's something that really resonated with me in what you said is, yeah, I chose dentistry similar to you because I felt like that's where I could make the most impact and really enjoy my life. But part of that enjoyment comes from helping the people that I work with. Yeah. So
that's the fun stuff. I mean, the fun stuff is bringing on a new client, working with them for 2 to 3 months, and then reaching out and saying, hey, how are we doing? Have we helped you? That's the thing. Have we helped you get better? And when they say, man, absolutely. These first 3 months have been fantastic. I know what I'm looking at now. You've given me a couple tips to go, talk to somebody on a marketing or talk to somebody on PPO insurance negotiations and fix things in their business. They feel like now they're getting help. And that's what we're here for. That's what you're here for.
Yeah.
We want to make them better. And that's what gives you enjoyment. That's what gives me enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Talk me through your ideal new client experience. So they come to you, walk me through sort of the first, tranches of time period, so to speak, of how you get them onboarded and how often are you meeting with them?
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. So really, I mean, the first thing you do, if you kind of reach out to us, is you've got a great, I use the word sales team. They're basically solutions advisors. They're talking and saying, hey, where are your pain points? Why are you coming to see us? How can we help? And we really have everything we do is monthly. That's what we want to do, right? Because that's where we provide the most value, as opposed to just being a transaction at the end of the year doing your tax return. There's nothing good about that. Typically, it's just surprises, and nobody
Only bad
walks away
news.
well. Only bad news. There's no good news in tax usually. So that's where proactivity comes in. But we work with that dental practice owner monthly. There's kind of, we're taking the bookkeeping on, and we're putting them in what we call the dental specific financial statement format, which is taking those gauges and putting them very easy to look at. And we're either meeting with that client every single month in a one-on-one hour-long call, diving deeper into their metrics. Or if you don't want to meet with us every month on a consulting basis, then we send you financial statements and a little more deliverables every month in a video to go along the way. But once we sign you up, we have what's called a 45-day sprint. We want to get you up and running as quick as we can. So that 45 days is our onboarding process. Depending on how much cleanup there needs to be, we want you to get you in a good spot so that then the value is delivered. And then tax, of course, comes with it, right? So as we're looking at your information monthly, tax comes in usually around 2 or 3 times a year to be very proactive. We're doing a lot of those meetings actually next month. We get through the first 6 months of the year, saying, hey, Doc, this is where you're at. You're having a good year. Might need to adjust some things, maybe utilize some different strategies. So really a monthly cadence on bookkeeping and the tax issues at least 2 or 3 times a year. We work really close with our partners. We're definitely a quantity or quality play versus quantity. We want really close touch points. That's how we can provide impact.
Man, that's great, Jared. It's so wonderful to hear. You hear so many horror stories around companies. I think the latest thing I'm hearing is around the employee retention credits of, everyone in the world is promising, $25,000 per employee. And it sounds so unhealthy to have some third party, not my CPA, do that. It sounds crazy to me, but I know I get asked, like, you didn't think about this ERTC? I'm like, man, why are you talking to me? Like, I'm a marketing guy. Like, bro, like, I have no idea what that means. Like, you need to go talk to your CPA. But it's, I'm glad that someone's pulling for them, because they're definitely marketed to very aggressively around the business services, and having someone in the corner is really powerful.
Yeah. I got at least me personally, I've gotten at least 5 phone calls in the past 2 or 3 weeks from these ERTC companies, trying to get me as a CPA firm owner, I guess, to look at the tax credit. I understand the credit. Our clients got the credit, but there's a lot of, especially around ERTC, there's a lot of aggressive players, I'll say it that way, in the industry that are trying to
there's
get you a big credit.
That's the new Nigerian prince yeah, for sure. Well, dear man, thanks so much for jumping on the show. Anytime you're love to have you back. And Jared Duckett Lad, CPA and Advisors out of Missouri. And thank you so much. I'll link the website and your bio and stuff into the channel.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Eric. We're located in Missouri, but work with clients all over the United States. So definitely appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you very much.